My name is Sharon. I need you to listen to what I have to say. 3 months ago, my heart stopped beating. The doctors in the ER, they worked on me, but they said I was gone for a full 15 minutes. 15 minutes where my body was lying on that table, but I was somewhere else. I have to take a deep breath even now, just thinking about it. Everyone always talks about a tunnel of light, or seeing loved ones who passed on. I wish that's what I saw, but it wasn't. It was the opposite. There was no sensation of floating. It was a pull, a heavy, downward pull into a darkness so thick it felt like I was drowning in oil. It smothered you, and the air, it burned your lungs, but there was no fire, no flames. What you felt burning was the total, complete absence of everything good, the absence of hope, the absence of love, the absence of God, and the sound. It's a sound that will never leave me. It was a constant, low weeping. Millions of voices, maybe more. But they weren't screaming from physical pain. It was a deeper agony. It was the sound of regret, an eternal, soul-crushing what if that just hangs in the air forever. But in the middle of all that hopeless dark, I realized I wasn't alone. He was there, and he didn't look like any of the pictures in old books. He didn't need horns or a pitchfork. His very presence was a sneer, like he was enjoying a private joke at the universe's expense. He was pure pride given form, the lie that breathes. And he looked right at me, and he smiled. It was a smile that didn't offer comfort. It was a smile of ownership, a smile that said, "Welcome home." What happened next is the reason I'm sitting here talking to you today. It's a warning. You need to hear what he told me. Before all this, before my world turned upside down, I was just like anyone else. Maybe just like you. I lived in a nice 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. You know the kind, where everyone mows their lawn on Saturday mornings. I was married to a good man, Tom, for 42 years. We raised 2 kids who grew up, went to college, and gave us grandkids we could spoil. On the outside, we were the picture of the American dream. We even went to church every Sunday, every single Sunday. I'd put on my best dress, Tom would wear a tie, and we'd sit in the 3rd pew from the front on the left. I knew all the hymns by heart. I'd smile and shake hands with everyone during the greeting time. I volunteered for the bake sales. I did all the things a good Christian woman was supposed to do. But here's the secret I never told a soul. It was all a show. I was there in body, but my heart was a million miles away. While the pastor spoke about grace, I was thinking about the grocery list. While we sang about surrender, I was mentally replaying a petty argument I'd had with my sister. My prayers were just a list of things I wanted, like a kid writing to Santa Claus. God wasn't my father. He was more like a cosmic vending machine I put my good deeds into, hoping to get blessings out. There was this hollowness inside me, a quiet ache that I'd push down with a new purchase from the mall, or by planning the next family get-together. I remember one Sunday, a new family visited the church. They looked a little rough around the edges. Their clothes were worn, and their car in the parking lot was old and rusty. I remember leaning over to my friend Susan and whispering, "I wonder what their story is." But my tone wasn't one of compassion. It was judgment. I was sizing them up, feeling superior in my comfortable life. I saw the speck in their eye and ignored the giant log in my own. I had no idea that kind of quiet, hidden pride was a poison that was slowly killing my soul long before my heart ever gave out. My life was a house built on sand. It looked sturdy. It looked beautiful. But it had no foundation. I believed in God with my head, the way you believe in historical facts. But I never let him into the messy rooms of my heart. I kept that door locked, bolted, and barred. I thought I was in control. But then came that Tuesday morning. It started just like any other day. The sun was shining, the coffee was brewing, and I was complaining to Tom about the price of gas. I had no idea that in less than an hour, my perfectly managed, predictable life was about to come to a screeching halt. I had no idea I was about to stand before the one who sees past the Sunday dresses and the polite smiles. And what he showed me next, well, that's when I understood what true fear really is. What would you do if you realized the life you were living was a lie? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And please, if this story is speaking to you, subscribe and turn on notifications. I have more to share, and you need to hear it. Looking back now, the signs were all there. They were like little yellow flags on the side of a road, warning of a bridge out ahead. But I was driving too fast, listening to my own music, and I just sped right past them. It started about a month before that Tuesday. It was a feeling, more than anything. A quiet hum of anxiety that settled deep in my bones. I'd be sitting in my favorite armchair, the afternoon sun streaming through the window, a cup of tea in my hand, and a wave of emptiness would just wash over me. It felt like my whole comfortable life was a movie set, and at any moment someone could yell cut and tear it all down. I told myself it was just hormones or stress. I was a master at explaining things away. Then came the dreams. Not every night, but often enough. They weren't scary in a monster under the bed kind of way. They were worse. In one, I was walking through my own house calling for Tom, calling for my kids, but the house was completely empty. The air was still and silent. I'd open a closet, and it would just be a black void. I'd look at the family pictures on the mantel and all the faces. They were just smooth, blank ovals. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, the sheets damp with sweat, and the feeling of absolute, crushing loneliness would stay with me all day. What good is a beautiful house if there's no one in it? But the thing I really, truly ignored was the physical warning. It started as a little flutter in my chest, like a trapped bird. I'd be washing dishes or folding laundry, and I'd have to stop and catch my breath. Then it became a tightness, a pressure, right in the center of my chest. I remember Tom looking at me one evening while we were watching TV. He saw me wince. His face got all creased with worry. "Sharon, are you okay? Maybe we should get that checked out." I just waved my hand, gave him a little laugh. "It's nothing, honey. Just a little indigestion from dinner." But it wasn't indigestion. I knew it wasn't. It felt like a fist, slowly closing around my heart. It was a secret I kept even from him. Why? I guess I thought admitting something was wrong meant I wasn't in control anymore. The week before it happened was the worst. Little things started going wrong, like a string of bad luck. My favorite coffee mug, the one my granddaughter painted for me, slipped from my hand and shattered on the tile floor. The old grandfather clock in the hallway, which had been ticking faithfully for 50 years, just stopped, dead on 3:15 in the afternoon. Each time, I'd get that same icy jolt of dread. A little voice in the back of my head whispered, "Something is coming. Pay attention." But I didn't listen. I just swept up the broken pieces, called a guy to fix the clock, and kept on moving. I was so busy managing my perfect little life that I never stopped to ask if I was managing my soul. I ignored the chills, the nightmares, the pain in my own chest. I ignored every single warning God was sending me. And then, that Tuesday morning, I ran out of time to listen. That Tuesday morning, the sun came through the kitchen window just like it always did, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. I was at the sink, rinsing my coffee cup. Tom had just left for his weekly breakfast with his buddies from the golf club. The house was quiet. It was just me and the low hum of the refrigerator. And then it came back. The fist. It started in the center of my chest, but this time it wasn't just squeezing. It was twisting. A hot, searing pain began to radiate out, down my left arm, up into my jaw. It felt like my whole body was being pulled into a knot. I dropped the cup. It didn't shatter, just clattered into the stainless steel sink with a dull thud that seemed to echo in the sudden silence of my mind. My first thought wasn't to call for help. It wasn't to pray. My first thought, I'm ashamed to say, was, "This is so inconvenient." I had laundry to do. I had to pick up a birthday card for my granddaughter. My brain was still trying to follow the day's to-do list while my body was screaming that the list didn't matter anymore. I stumbled away from the sink, grabbing the back of a kitchen chair to steady myself. My breath was coming in short, useless little gasps. The edges of my vision started to go fuzzy and dark, like an old photograph burning from the edges in. I could see the little magnetic notepad on the fridge, my own handwriting. Buy milk, call Susan, pick up dry cleaning. It all seemed so incredibly stupid. My knees buckled. I didn't fall so much as slide down the kitchen cabinet, my back scraping against the wood. The cold of the linoleum floor seeped through my clothes, a strange, final sensation. I could hear a buzzing sound, getting louder and louder, filling my head. And through it, I could hear a distant, panicked voice. It took me a moment to realize it was my own, making a weak, gurgling sound. My life didn't flash before my eyes. There was no beautiful montage of memories. There was just this one, crystal-clear image in my head. The blank, smooth faces from my dream, the empty house, the crushing loneliness. And for the first time, I understood. My life hadn't been full. It had been hollow. I had filled it with things, with schedules, with appearances, but it was empty. My last thought before it all went black was a desperate bargain. A prayer that was really just a transaction. God, if you get me out of this, I promise I'll. But I never got to finish the sentence. There was a final, violent squeeze. A pressure so immense it felt like the universe was collapsing into the single point where my heart used to be. And then, nothing. The pain was gone. The buzzing was gone. The cold of the floor was gone. There was a feeling not of floating up, but of being untethered, like a balloon whose string had just been cut. One moment I was Sharon, lying on my kitchen floor, staring at the dust bunnies under the refrigerator. The next, I was somewhere else entirely. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me more than any earthly cold, that my bargaining prayer had been sent to the wrong address. It's hard to describe the exact moment of separation. There was no pop, no sound. 1 second, I was in my body, feeling the cold linoleum. The next, I was looking down at it, at myself. I was hovering near the ceiling, like a forgotten party balloon, watching this woman in a floral house dress lying crumpled on the floor. My woman, me. Her eyes were open, glassy, staring at nothing. Her hand was still outstretched towards the phone that she never reached. And I felt nothing. No pity, no panic, just a strange, cold detachment, like I was watching a scene from a movie I'd seen 100 times before. I tried to move, to float over to the window, but I couldn't. I didn't have arms or legs anymore. I wasn't a ghost, not like in the stories. I was just awareness, a point of view. I could see the whole kitchen at once, the dust motes still dancing in the sunbeam, the half-rinsed cup in the sink, the grocery list on the fridge, mocking me with its stupid, normal little tasks. The world was still there, but it was like I was watching it through a thick pane of glass. I could see it, but I couldn't touch it. I couldn't feel it. The silence was the worst part. The low hum of the refrigerator I'd lived with for 10 years, it was gone. It was a perfect, absolute, dead silence. Then I felt it, a gentle tug. It wasn't coming from above. It was coming from below, from right through the floorboards. At first, it was just a nudge, like a current in the water. I tried to resist it, tried to focus on the kitchen, on the sunlight, on anything that felt like home, but the pull got stronger. It was like a giant invisible magnet was under the house, and I was made of iron. The colors in the room began to fade, turning into shades of gray. The sunlight from the window didn't seem warm anymore. It looked thin and weak, like a dying star. The feeling of being untethered was gone. Now, I was being reeled in, down, always down. I passed through the kitchen floor as if it were smoke. I saw the pipes, the foundation of my house, the very earth it was built on, and it all just dissolved around me. The last thing I saw of my world was a final pinprick of that weak gray light from my kitchen window, and then it winked out, and I was left in a darkness that wasn't just the absence of light. It was a physical presence, a heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed in from all sides. The silence was replaced by a sound I can barely stand to remember. It was the low, heartbroken weeping of a million souls, and I knew, with a terror that was purer than anything I had ever felt, that I hadn't just died. I had arrived. But what I was shown in that place, the reason I'm here now, that's when my real education began. Have you ever wondered what happens the second after we die? Tell me what you think in the comments below. If this story matters to you, please subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss what comes next. I have so much more I need to warn you about. The darkness in that place wasn't empty. It was full. It was full of every good thing being ripped away. And he stood in the middle of it all, perfectly at home. My very soul was shaking, a vibration of pure terror. I tried to scream, but I had no mouth. I tried to run, but I had no legs. I was just a consciousness, trapped in his gaze. He drew closer, and his voice wasn't a booming, monstrous roar. It was calm. It was almost charming, which made it 1,000 times more horrifying. And he didn't speak to my ears. He spoke directly into my soul, his words blooming in my mind like poisonous flowers. "You don't belong here," he told me, that smile of ownership never leaving his face. "Not yet anyway, but so many of yours are on their way. I'm always surprised by how eagerly they come. They build their own cages, you see. I just locked the door." And then he showed me. It wasn't like watching a movie. I was experiencing it. He peeled back a layer of reality and forced me to see the paths that led to this place of eternal regret. "The first group is the easiest," he said, his tone like a businessman discussing a successful quarter. "They're the ones who heard the name of the Savior, Jesus Christ, and just said, 'No, thanks, I'm good.' They chose themselves. They chose their own truth, their own ego. They looked at the free rescue raft God sent for them and decided they'd rather try to swim on their own. Their pride was the one-way ticket they bought directly to my kingdom." I felt a wave of sorrow for those souls, but what he showed me next turned my blood to ice. "The second group," he continued, and I could feel his amusement, "are the ones who believed with their lips, but never with their hearts. They looked the part. They were Sunday Christians." The words hit me like a physical blow. They knew all the rules. They volunteered for the bake sales. They smiled and shook all the right hands. But their hearts were cold as stone. They sinned in secret, judged their neighbors in silence, and never, ever truly repented. They confused tradition with salvation. They thought looking good on the outside was enough to fool the one who sees the inside. For them, forgiveness was just one prayer away, but it was a prayer they never truly meant. In that moment, I saw myself. I saw my whispers to Susan in the church pew. I saw my hollow, transactional prayers. I saw the locked door to my own heart. I wasn't just watching a category of people. He was showing me my own reflection. I was one of them. The horror of that recognition was a pain far worse than any heart attack. But he wasn't finished. "And the third," he said, and I could feel a genuine glint of delight in his mind. "Oh, they're my favorites. They're the ones who deliberately lived in sin. They knew gossip, lies, envy, and adultery were wrong, but they loved the thrill of it. They'd say, 'God is love, He'll forgive me.' And they used His grace like a get-out-of-jail-free card. They treated the cross like a credit card with no limit, thinking they could rack up a lifetime of debt and just wipe the slate clean on their deathbed. They played games with sin, thinking they'd always have time to clean up their act at the last minute." He paused, letting the horror sink in. "But their time ran out." He looked right through me then, and his final thought to me was a pronouncement of victory. "You see, it's not so hard. All you have to do is nothing." And in that instant of absolute despair, as I realized my life had been a lie headed for this exact destination, I felt a jolt, a violent electric shock that ripped through my entire being. Have you ever felt like you were just going through the motions in your own life? Let me know in the comments. And please, subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Because what happened when I opened my eyes again is something everyone needs to hear. That jolt wasn't like a shock from a faulty wire. It was a light, a single pure white pinprick in that suffocating darkness, and it shot through me like lightning. The heavy, oppressive presence of him, it recoiled. It was like a vampire seeing the sun. For the first time in that place, I felt something other than terror. It was warmth. And then I heard a new voice. It didn't bloom in my mind like a poison flower. It was a voice that felt like coming home after a long, terrible journey. It was a voice of absolute authority, but it was layered with a love so deep it broke my heart. It didn't ask what I had done. It didn't list my sins. It asked me one simple question. Do you choose me now? There was no time. There were no words. It was a choice made in an instant, from the deepest part of my soul that I had kept locked away for 42 years. It wasn't a bargain. It was a surrender. A complete, total, tear-filled surrender. Yes, my entire being screamed. Yes. Forever. Yes. And the voice gave me one final thought. Not a command, but a promise. Then go, and tell them the door is still open. The pull reversed. It was no longer a heavy, downward drag into the abyss. It was a swift, powerful lift, like being pulled from the bottom of the ocean by a hand that would not let go. The darkness dissolved below me. The sound of weeping faded away until it was nothing more than a bad memory. I shot back up through the layers of earth, through the foundation of my house, through the kitchen floorboards in a blur of light and speed. I slammed back into my body with the force of a car crash. The first thing I felt was pain. The crushing, searing pain in my chest was back, 1,000 times worse than before. But it was the most beautiful feeling in the world, because it meant I was alive. The dead silence was shattered by a high-pitched, steady beep. The smell of antiseptic burned my nose. A bright, white light burned my eyes. I forced my eyelids open. They felt like they were made of lead. I saw blurry shapes in blue scrubs hovering over me. I heard panicked voices. "We've got a rhythm! Clear! Push one of Epi!" I could feel the cold gel on my chest, the hard plastic of a mask over my face forcing air into my lungs. I was back. I was really, truly back. A man's face came into focus above me. A doctor. He had kind, tired eyes. He looked down at me, his expression a mix of shock and relief. "Sharon? Can you hear me? You're in the hospital. You had a massive heart attack. We lost you for a while there." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. I could only manage a croak. But I had to tell them. I had to warn them. I took a ragged breath, the new air a gift in my lungs, and with all the strength I had, I screamed the first words that came to my soul. "He's real. Hell is real." What would you do if you were given a second chance to change everything? Let me know your honest answer in the comments. And please, if my story has touched you, subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Because what I learned about heaven and how to make sure you get there is the story I have to tell next. You'd think the doctors would have been shocked, that they would have asked me questions, but they didn't. To them, my screaming about hell was just a symptom, a side effect of my brain being starved of oxygen. One of the nurses, a young woman with a kind but tired face, just patted my arm. "It's okay, Sharon," she said in that soft, placating voice people use for the confused. "You had a bad dream. You're safe now." A bad dream. If only they knew. They were so busy saving my body, they had no idea my soul had just been rescued. Tom arrived a little while later. I saw him in the doorway of the ICU, his face pale and etched with a fear I'd never seen on him in 42 years of marriage. He rushed to my bedside and grabbed my hand, his own trembling. "Sharon, oh honey, I thought I lost you." Tears were streaming down his face and my heart ached for him. I squeezed his hand back. "Tom," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "We have to change. Everything. It's all real." He just shook his head, trying to smile through the tears. "Shh. Don't talk. Just rest. The doctor said you're a miracle." He thought the miracle was my heart starting again. He didn't understand the real miracle was where it started again. Those first few days back were disorienting. The world felt too bright, too loud. The colors were almost painful to look at, like my eyes weren't used to them anymore. Food was tasteless. The concerns of the world seemed so trivial, so foolish. I'd watch the news on the little TV in my room, see people arguing about politics or money, and a wave of desperate sadness would wash over me. It was like watching children playing on the edge of a cliff, completely unaware of the danger. I could see the cliff now. I could see it everywhere, under everyone. I knew I was different when Tom brought me a stack of my favorite magazines to pass the time. Before, I would have devoured them, catching up on celebrity gossip and home decorating tips. But now, I looked at the smiling, beautiful people on the covers, and I didn't feel envy or admiration. I felt a deep, aching pity. I just wanted to reach through the page and ask them, "Do you know? Does anyone ever talk to you about what really matters?" Tom saw the look on my face as I pushed the magazines away. He didn't understand. He just looked hurt, confused. "I thought you'd like those," he said quietly. How could I explain to him that the person who liked those things died on our kitchen floor? The hardest part was the loneliness. I was surrounded by people who loved me. My kids flew in. Friends sent flowers. But I had never felt more alone in my entire life. They'd talk to me about my recovery plan, about cardiac rehab and low-sodium diets. And I'd try to talk to them about eternity, about the 3 kinds of people, about the smile on his face. They'd listen patiently, then change the subject. They'd look at each other with worried glances when they thought I wasn't watching. They thought I was broken. And maybe I was, but not in the way they thought. My old life had been shattered, and I had no desire to pick up the pieces. Lying in that hospital bed, I looked out the window at the cars passing on the street below. Each one was a little bubble, carrying a soul that was headed somewhere. For the first time, I felt the weight of the promise I'd been given. Go, and tell them the door is still open. It wasn't a suggestion. It was my reason for coming back. My bake sales and Sunday smiles were over. My real life, my real purpose, was just beginning. Have you ever felt like you knew something incredibly important, but no one around you would take you seriously? Let me know in the comments how that felt. And please, subscribe and hit that bell. Because my journey of trying to warn a world that didn't want to listen, that's where things got really difficult. Going home from the hospital was the strangest part. The house was the same. The grandfather clock was ticking again. Tom had gotten it fixed. The family photos on the mantel were still smiling. But I wasn't the same. I walked into our living room, the one I had decorated with so much care over the years, and it felt like walking onto a stranger's movie set. The plush sofa, the expensive curtains, the little ceramic birds I'd collected. They were just things. Hollow. They had no meaning anymore. It was like I had been colorblind my whole life and had just been shown a rainbow. Now, looking back at my old black and white world, it all just seemed gray. Tom tried so hard. He really did. He thought that if he could just get me back into our old routine, the old Sharon would come back. He'd put on our favorite game show at night. But I couldn't watch it. The sound of the cheering audience and the spinning wheels felt like a horrible, frantic noise. He'd talk about planning a cruise, like we used to, and I'd just stare at him. A cruise? It felt as insane as planning a picnic on the edge of an active volcano. He was talking about shuffleboard, and I was seeing the faces of the eternally lost. He would reach for my hand, his brow furrowed with worry, and I'd let him hold it. But I knew my hand felt different to him. It was no longer the hand of his partner. It was the hand of a witness. But trying to explain that to my husband, that was a different kind of hell. I'd try to tell him late at night when the house was quiet. I'd say, "Tom, we're living like we have a million tomorrows. We don't." His face would just get this sad, patient look. He'd pat my shoulder and say, "You went through a trauma, hun. The doctors said this is normal." He thought I was broken by what I'd been through. He didn't understand that I had been broken before, and now I was finally being made whole. He wanted to heal me, but the cure he was offering was the very disease I was trying to escape. So I started small. I tried to talk to others. I was in the grocery store one afternoon, and the young woman at the checkout. She looked so tired. She had dark circles under her eyes. I just looked at her and said, "Jesus loves you so much." She stopped scanning my items, blinked at me for a second, and then just gave me that tight, polite smile. "That'll be $42.50, she said, her voice completely flat. I left the store with my groceries, and my heart felt like a lead weight in my chest. I had the antidote for the whole world in my hands, and nobody wanted it. They thought I was just some crazy old lady. The breaking point came a few weeks later. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd collapsed, and I just started weeping. Not quiet little tears, but those big, ugly sobs that come from the bottom of your soul. I was failing. God had sent me back with a message, and I couldn't even get it past the checkout counter. I was alone, My family thought I was losing my mind, and souls were slipping through my fingers every single second. I put my head in my hands and I prayed, but this time it wasn't a list of wants. It was just one word. How? I whispered to the empty room. How do I do this? And then I looked up. My granddaughter had left her tablet on the table. The screen was on, showing some video of a young person talking into a camera, just sharing their life. And it hit me. It was a thought so clear, so bright, it felt like it was placed directly in my mind. You can't reach them one by one, so speak to them all. My hands were shaking as I picked up the tablet. I didn't know how any of this worked, but I knew, with a certainty, that settled all the chaos inside me, that this was the way. This was the mission. I wasn't just Sharon, the retired homemaker anymore. I was a messenger, and I had a story to tell. Have you ever felt a calling so strong it completely changed the direction of your life? Tell me about it in the comments below. Please, subscribe to this channel and ring that bell. I'm just getting started, and the things I need to share next are the most important words you will ever hear. So I sit here now, in the same house, but in a completely different world. I look back at the woman I was, the one who worried about matching throw pillows and what the neighbors thought of her lawn, and I feel a profound sadness for her. She was so busy polishing the outside of her life that she never realized the inside was rotting away. She was living in a beautiful house that was about to be washed away by the storm, and she didn't even know a storm was coming. My journey to hell and back wasn't a punishment. I see that now. It was a rescue. It was the most terrifying, most merciful act of love I have ever experienced. It was a divine hand reaching down and shaking me awake from a comfortable sleepwalk into eternal regret. The lesson wasn't that God is angry. The lesson is that the choices we make in the quiet of our own hearts have consequences that are more real and more permanent than this entire physical world. I was given a second chance, not because I was special, or because I deserved it. I deserved exactly what I was headed for. I was brought back for one reason, and one reason only: to be a signpost. To stand here and tell you, with every fiber of my being, that the road you are on matters. He is not a cosmic vending machine. He is a father who is waiting desperately for his children to come home, but he will not force the door open. You have to turn the knob yourself. I'm no longer afraid of dying. The only thing I'm afraid of now is silence. I'm afraid of staying quiet and letting someone else make the same mistake I did. I spent 15 minutes in that place of eternal regret. My new life is dedicated to making sure you don't have to spend 1 second there. The door is still open. The choice is still yours. What are you building your life on? Is it sand, or is it the rock? If this story has spoken to you, please subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. I have so much more to share, stories of hope and warnings that you need to hear, and I promise, I will not be silent again.